Hello, everybody. Grace chatting here again. And this is the third video in a series of 4 about living with an alcoholic. In the first one, I told you what I'd learned in the 12 years since my original video, How to Survive Living with an Alcoholic. In the second, I explained the science of why you haven't been able to just leave and why that has nothing to do with weakness. And you don't need to have seen either one of those or any of those videos, really, but they're both here on the channel if you want to go watch them first. So in this video today, I want to talk about a word. And it's a word that may have been thrown at you, maybe by a therapist or a counselor, or by your in-laws or by a book or perhaps even your own son or daughter. And I want to tell you a kinder truth about that word, that, it's codependent. Now, like I've been a therapist for near enough 40 years now, and I know if I went back 40 years ago when I was training and I was still, um, you know, uh, in training, shall we say, that was the word that was used. And that was my understanding of it at the time, codependent. So I want to set that straight and help you to kind of perhaps see it with more up-to-date and current eyes. Maybe you've done the quizzes, online quizzes, and you've read the books with the checklists, and maybe somebody said it to you in an argument. Oh, you're codependent and you're part of the problem. You enable them. I'm just going to take my glasses off so as I can see. Um, and somebody saying that to you, you're codependent and you're part of the problem, and you enable him. Do you see what that does? There you are. You're living with a minimum problem drinker, which is hard enough. And now you're handed a diagnosis of your own. And first, he blamed you for his drinking. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't need to drink or whatever. And now it seems that the experts blame you for how you've coped with this drinking. So you get blamed twice. And I've watched that. I've been in that double bind, and I've watched that same double bind crush a lot of women. And, they arrive in our support group saying, it turns out it's me. I'm the codependent one. I'm sick too. So let me say this very clearly right at the beginning here. The behaviors are real. They are real behaviors. You have got behaviors that are not helpful for you. And we do need to talk about them because they'll cost you your life if they run unchecked, for sure. But the story you've been told about what they mean, that there's something defective in you, something that was always broken, and that story is wrong. And the newer understanding is far kinder and far more useful, I would say. So 12 years ago in my original How to Survive Living with an Alcoholic video, I described what happens to the partner of an alcoholic. And I still stand by every word of the description today. Um, the alcoholic becomes preoccupied with when and where and how he's going to get his next drink. And you become preoccupied with when and where and how he's going to get his next drink, or more to the point, he's not going to get his next drink. So where his life revolves around alcohol, your life revolves around his life revolving around alcohol. And I said it back then, you're not in a relationship anymore then. You're in an entanglement. Um, and I've talked about the drama triangle, rescuing him and then feeling the victim of him, and then persecuting him with the anger and the contempt and then rescuing him again, and round that triangle that you go. And we've talked about the martyr who keeps on, keeps the roof on, keeps the children fed, keeps the show on the road, and actually slowly disappears. And the tragedy of it is you finish up losing yourself. And that's one of the biggest losses, is to lose your own life. You see yourself slowly disappear. And all of that is true. And that's what codependence looks like from the outside. But here's the question that does a perfectly sensible, capable, looking at why does a perfectly sensible, capable, loving woman end up living like that? And the answer is not because there's something wrong with her. I would say there's a kinder truth than that. If you think back to the science from the last video, when I talked about the unpredictability that you live with, and the intermittent reinforcement, and the never knowing which version of him is going to come through the door. Is it going to be Mr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde? Your body responds to unpredictable danger the way human bodies always have. It goes on guard, and it stays on guard. Now, why or what does a person on guard do? What do they do? Well, she watches, she reads faces, she checks on bottles, she smooths things over before they blow up, she pleases, she appeases, she keeps the children quiet, she rings work to make excuses for him, she manages the money, she plans every evening around his moods, she tries to control the thing that's frightening her, because controlling it feels like the only way to be safe, to feel safe. So every one of those behaviors, every single one of those codependency checklists is an intelligent response to living with danger. Living with danger and uncertainty evokes those kind of survival behaviors. Watching his mood is not a character flaw. It's what any sensible person does around something unpredictable. Covering up is not dishonesty. Well, it is, but it's for different reasons, and that still doesn't make it okay. It's protecting your family the only way that seems available. And trying to control his drinking is not arrogance or assuming that you've got power over. It's what love does when it's frightened. So that's the kinder truth. Codependency is not a defect you were born with. It's what survival looks like when it has to go on for far, far too long. So you were not broken and then drawn to a drinker. You were, if you like, bent into the shape of coping with one. So a shape you were bent into is a shape that you can be unbent from. So hold on to that, because I'll be coming back to it. So the kinder truth doesn't mean it's any cozier. And to be honest with you, about these survival habits, because this is the part that made me make these videos in the first place, the cost is you. The cost is you losing yourself. The watching, the managing, the controlling, it swallows the whole of your person. It saps your energy. It is exhausting. Your interests go, you lose them. Your friendships go, your work shrinks, your health frays. And one day you catch yourself screaming, maybe at a child that you really love and care about, and going, or you find yourself going through your partner's pockets, or you're lying smoothly to his employer, and you think, who is this woman? This is not who I am. This is not who I was ever going to be. And this is not how I want to be. So one of the women in my Rebuild Your Life group, Jane, she was a school teacher, and she was quite warm and funny. And by the time she found her way to our group, she was checking her husband's mileage. She was sniffing his coffee cups to see had he been drinking. She was timing his trips to the shop to see if he'd called off at the off license on the way. And in her own words, she said, you know, I hadn't really laughed in about 6 years. The drinking was his, but the disappearing was what was happening to her. And she'll tell you today, the turning point was not the day he stopped drinking, because he didn't stop drinking. The turning point was the day she understood that all that watching, all that checking was a survival habit, and it was not a life, and it was not a life that she was wanting to have, and that she was allowed to put it down. She did not have to carry on living that way. Even with him, she didn't have to carry on living that way. But it's difficult if you're living with it to stop doing all those survival things. So today she teaches again, and she laughs again. And the woman who sniffed the coffee cups is somebody she speaks about with compassion now, the way you'd speak about someone who carried you through a war. So the honest truth about staying. So I'm being careful what I say here because in our free group, there are women who stayed with their drinking partner, and who built a decent life alongside the drinking. And as I've said before, I really, really do honor them. It can't be an easy choice. But when I look honestly at who managed that, they nearly all had two things. They had money and buffers, the ones who managed it. They had help that they could pay for, so they weren't going around trying to keep up with the housework and household chores and things, exhausted from being awake half the night waiting for their partner to come home. They had ways of getting out of the house. They had either a golf club, or they had the means to have holidays away from their partner, or they had grown up children who, you know, could accommodate them for holidays and, you know, breaks away. Adult children who kind of understood, but it didn't have to be like that they were making an escape. They could just go and visit them and switch off and relax and have a bit of downtime. You know, so they had rooms of their own. They had literal and otherwise rooms and space, and that places where the drinking couldn't reach really. So, and most of them were older with adult children, not dependent children, and most of them they had, you know, a social circle around them. So, in some ways, it made sense for them to stay. So, here's why it matters in this video in particular. Detaching from an alcoholic while still living with them, stepping out of the entanglement without leaving the house, is the hardest version of recovery that there is, because a cushion of money does buy you distance, and without it, and without the respite that it buys you, the entanglement tends to be total, and the official figures stay the same. You know, same thing from another direction. Deaths from alcohol run more than twice as high in the poorest areas. You know, I've said that before. So if you're 35 with two children and no savings and no escape hatches, and you're telling yourself you'll simply learn to detach and manage because somebody else seems to, I want to make that decision. I want you to make that decision with your eyes fully open about what it actually took for the women who managed it. your choice as your adult self, because it is your decision. And that was true 12 years ago, and it's still true today. It's not for me or for anybody else to tell you to stay or go. But in this video, there is a kind of truth about codependency. And what that kind of truth changes is, you know, that the martyr keeping it all together and the victim of what he's doing are not really you. Their positions on that old triangle, and it shapes the situation that bent you into it. The choice about your life shouldn't be made from inside those shapes. So make it as your adult self, a grown woman, looking clearly at her one wild and precious life, deciding what she will and will not accept. And whichever way you decide, the moment it becomes your choice, you stop becoming a victim and you take your power back. And that is the beginning of stepping off the triangle, whether you step out of the front door or not. And, you know, for those of you who attend Al Anon and those of you who don't attend Al Anon, who have an understanding of a higher power or a God of their understanding, and this is not about religion, it's about having a higher wisdom or a higher power that you, when you've run out of your own human resources, that you can turn to. And so here's the hope that follows straight from the science. Everything that was learned can be unlearned. A nervous system trained by chaos can be retrained by safety. I've said that before and I'm saying it again. The habits of watching and controlling, led down over years, can be led down again, and they can be led down differently. And it helps to have, you know, a support group. Uh, so I would say there are three ways that you can go from here. You can join our free support group, Reclaim Your Life. There's nearly 600 people in that group, and you don't have to, you know, say anything, just join. The links are down below. There's this book. A lot of women have found it helpful. Women who loved too much, loved being in the past tense, where this kinder understanding runs through every chapter. And then there is the final video in this series where I'll tell you what help actually works now in 2026, including approaches for family members that didn't exist when I started this work, and it certainly didn't exist 12 years ago. And one legal change every woman in this situation deserves to know about. So please pass this video on to anyone you know who's in this kind of situation. And remember, you're not mad, you're not weak, and you're not alone. And you never were the problem. You were the person coping with the problem. And coping is a shape you can step out of. And I watch women do this every month. So thank you for listening. And hopefully I'll see you in the next video or in one of the groups. So bye for now.